Hello and welcome to Monday's ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Getting developers to pay up for construction cladding defects. Flat owners welcome today's news.
I'm cautiously optimistic now. I think all of us feel there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, but the construction companies could well kick back at it.
It's potentially life-changing. So why are some foods still not being labelled for those with allergies?
It's important that they follow Untitled law because it enables people with allergies to feel more confident and not always on high alert.
Also this Monday evening, plans to help those who need a local bank when the branch in their town or village has shut up shop.
Good evening. People living in low-rise housing blocks have been told by the government that developers will be made to help them remove potentially inflammable cladding and bear the cost. Until now, many homeowners in such flats in places like Chatham and Eastbourne have been told they'd have to pay.
Well, many flat owners have been left with crippling bills. Others have been stuck with properties that are virtually unsellable. All this after the Grenfell Tower disaster 5 years ago, which revealed the dangers of flammable cladding. Well, here's Abigail Bracken with the latest.
Holders of lower-rise buildings like this one here in Chatham have been at risk of paying huge costs to replace unsafe cladding. As the building is below 18 metres, unlike its near neighbour, it's not been covered by the government commitment to protect them from paying. But now the government says it wants builders to cover the costs.
I'm cautiously optimistic now. I think all of us feel there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, but we think there's a long way to go. Michael Gove has said he's going to sort it out, and I believe he is, but I think it is a long way to go, and I think the construction companies could well kick back at it. Well, the reality is we can't sell our flats. They're blighted because nobody will buy them and you can't get a mortgage on them because you don't have the EWS1 certificate. In fact, we're supposed not to need it, but the mortgage lenders are still holding back, and people feel trapped.
Following the Grenfell fire in 2017 that killed 72 people, flammable cladding and other fire risks have been found in many homes. And the Housing Secretary said today that he would use legal means, if necessary, to make developers fix the dangers.
Leaseholders are shouldering a desperately unfair burden. They're blameless, and it is morally wrong that they should be the ones asked to pay the price. I'm clear about who should pay the price for remedying failures. It should be the industries who profited as they caused the problem and those who continue to profit as they make it worse.
Buildings like this one in Eastbourne learned earlier this year that they would be protected from the costs of paying for their unsafe cladding to be replaced. But leaseholders in lower-rise buildings like here in Chatham have been facing unknown costs. Just within the last few weeks, a 24-hour waking watch has started patrolling this building to look out for fires. And residents have been told they can't park their cars right by the building anymore in case a car fire sets light to the cladding above. And the manufacturer of aluminium balconies based in Rochester says that homeowners need help, not just with cladding.
Well, I think the most important thing is that clarity is given to leaseholders on the aspects other than cladding, beyond cladding. So, for example, wooden balconies or fire breaks in the external envelope. Until that is addressed, leaseholders are still on the hook for those costs. And they can be significant costs to remediate these on multi-occupancy buildings.
And now residents here are giving the news a cautious welcome and hope their cladding can now be replaced. Abigail Bracken, ITV News, Chatham.
On to other news. The Home Secretary says the inquiry set up in light of the murder of Sarah Everard will look at whether any warning signs were missed when vetting the policeman from Kent who killed her. Wayne Cousins from Deal was given a whole life sentence after he raped and killed her last March. Priti Patel says the inquest will examine his overall conduct with the police and whether any issues with his behaviour were raised by colleagues.
Almost £10,000 has been raised for the family of a paramedic who was killed in a collision in Sevenoaks. Alice Clark died when her ambulance collided with a cement lorry on the A21 on Wednesday night. 2 other emergency workers were also injured in the crash, one seriously. Well, police are appealing for witnesses and for dashcam footage.
A reduced timetable on southeastern services began today. Around 7% of trains have been cut due to the increasing number of staff affected by coronavirus, and government advice for the public to work from home where possible.
3 months since a potentially life-changing law on food labelling was introduced, businesses in Kent and Sussex have been found to be breaking the rules.
Since October, companies which make sandwiches or baguettes on site have had to follow Natasha's law, meaning all allergens must be labelled.
But as James Dunham reports, the message still hasn't got through everywhere, and confidence for people with allergies hasn't improved either.
We can cook quite a lot of stuff with gluten-free pastas.
At his home near Gatwick, Zach's chances of an allergic reaction are pretty slim.
And what about things like sausage rolls?
Yeah, Dad makes a good sausage roll.
Yeah.
The pasta, crackers and cakes are all wheat and nut free. When eating out though, there is greater risk.
We always carry 2 EpiPen or Jexpen in these cases. There's Zach's allergies, with it being wheat, which is quite difficult to avoid in many products. We have had accidental exposure, often when we're out and about in cafes or restaurants.
The family say a law named after Natasha Ednan Laperouse, who died after eating a baguette containing sesame, is progress. But despite pre-packaged food being sold at a cafe or bakery needing to display all 14 allergens, confidence is still lacking.
There still could be an element of human error in a preparation of something. So that's where we would like to see things going forward, is that people understand that allergies are very serious and life-threatening.
It's important that they follow Natasha's law because it enables people with allergies to feel more confident and not always on high alert when they go out.
Full labelling is now required on all food known as pre-packed for direct sale.
With the help of the Food Standards Agency, Essex, Kent and Sussex trading standards teams have been trying to educate businesses on the changes.
And a full ingredient list.
Spot checks by Richard and Helen since the law's introduction have found breaches though.
So these have no labelling at all, and they have things such as sesame seeds, which you can see here, which are an allergen, and on this product, which also has no labelling, there's likely to be wheat in the crust probably, i.e. gluten, and some egg probably in the filling as it's a custard tart. So anybody who's allergic to those ingredients, they could be potentially dangerous.
Worryingly, another product contains sesame, despite the ingredients not being listed on the label. When you found that places aren't complying with the new laws, do you think that's down to lack of education or just lack of want to change and adapt to the regulations?
There's a number of reasons why businesses aren't complying at the moment. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's knowledge, but we're working with all those businesses to make sure that they change that labelling as soon as they can, so that allergy sufferers can shop with confidence.
By nature, big businesses such as supermarkets are more likely to have the resources in place to label the allergens on products like this, whereas smaller cafes and bakeries could struggle. In fact, one industry group says that pre-packaged products are now off the menu in some places because there is just too much risk.
It's really difficult in very small kitchen environments to avoid cross-contamination between one ingredient and another getting into something. So something like a sesame, and those sesame seeds are very light and get around everywhere. To avoid a sesame seed getting into another sandwich or product is really difficult to do.
Natasha's law does offer protection, but for Zach, who is among more than 2 million people in the UK with a food allergy, a full sense of faith in the food he sees on sale is not being felt just yet. James Dunham, ITV News.
Now, bank branches have been disappearing from our high streets at a steady pace over the last few years, and there's no sign of the rate of closures slowing down as more banking moves online.
Critics say closures hit groups like the elderly, who may have limited access to the internet and can't always travel to other branches further away. To try to alleviate the impact, a new scheme run by the Post Office is being expanded, where banks are joining forces to offer their services at what's called a bank hub.
Well, 2 pilot hubs are already operating. 5 more will open this year, and many more are expected to be set up in the future. With more on this, here's Kevin Ashford.
The signs of a shrinking bank branch network are a common sight on our high streets. This branch in Seaford closed in October. The local councillor who campaigned to keep it open says customers miss out on face-to-face banking.
Basically, the ability to come in and have contact with a human being. A lot of residents in Seaford, the population is an elderly one, and they don't have access to the internet, and I think that's a really important general point.
Bank branches have been closing steadily in recent years. According to one analysis, in the last 7 years, local branches have disappeared on average at more than 50 a month. Last year saw well over 700 close, and more than 200 are already earmarked for closure in 2022. Now, when banks close, it can have a huge impact on people, businesses, the community as a whole. However, this may be one way to lessen the effect. This is a bank hub, where different banks have pooled resources to offer face-to-face banking on one site at different times during the week. It's all run by the Post Office, who say business has been brisk.
When we first opened, it was just after lockdown, we immediately were serving 250 people a week. Now we're up to 600 people a week for cash withdrawals, deposits, just simple transactions, but makes it so much more convenient and life so much easier for people locally.
It gives a place for anyone in the community to access banking services when you're losing so many branches.
Having the bank hub is really good, and it's like a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk for me to get here, so definitely I use it all the time.
When you live local, you want something local, don't you?
The hubs are the result of an independent review of the sector, which looked at ways of allowing people to maintain access to cash when they need it.
The problem is that for individual banks, keeping a bank branch running when you might only be serving, say, 20 or 30% of the population is pretty hard, which is why we've seen so many bank branches close. But that's leaving communities, small businesses, individuals without the services they need. So what a bank hub does is it allows us to create a service that helps the whole of that community with the cost shared between all the banks.
Campaigners say disabled people can be especially badly hit by bank closures because, for example, of difficulties accessing the internet. They welcome the idea of bank hubs, but say more needs to be done.
I like to see the cooperation between banks, but I think they need to go a bit further. They need to be open all week. They need to make sure that they have face-to-face provision for disabled and older customers. It is required by the Equality Act that they make reasonable adjustments for disabled customers, and they should do that.
The UK's Banking Trade Association said in a statement it acknowledged bank branches play an important role in communities and said decisions to close them are not taken lightly. In the future, any bank branch closure will be subject to an independent review, and if local needs aren't met by what's left in the area, the banks have agreed to set up a hub like this one to meet them. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Sounds like a good idea. Now, a sunken cargo vessel off the coast of Sheerness could cause widespread damage and a loss of life if it exploded. That's according to MOD reports.
The SS Montgomery has remained a threat to shipping since it sunk in 1944 because it still has 1,400 tonnes of explosives on board.
And now there's growing concern the masts are also damaged. They could disturb the bombs if they fell. Joe Cosham has more.
The SS Richard Montgomery has laid dormant at the bottom of the sea off the coast of Sheerness for more than 75 years. Since then, calls for it to be dismantled have been resisted, despite it having 1,400 tonnes of explosives on board. Until now.
Now it's deemed that we have to remove the masts because the masts are beginning to erode below sea level. And I think that's probably a sensible idea because the last thing we want is the masts to break off and fall into the areas where the bombs are stacked. The risk is that there are some fuses contained within some of the munitions, particularly the scatter bombs. Now, it's probably true to say that by now, 76 odd years later, that the fuses are probably silted up, but you would only need one that isn't. And if it was disturbed, this may set off the rest in a chain reaction.
Collins' concern comes as a Ministry of Defence report warned for the first time what damage could be done in a worst-case scenario. It says an explosion would create waves up to 5 metres high. impacting the nearby power station on the Isle of Grain, inflicting mass damage and potential loss of life. But the Maritime Coast Guard Agency say the risk of a major explosion is remote, and the ship remains under 24-hour surveillance in an exclusion zone. But the dismantling has to be properly executed. So the Department for Transport has called in 2 specialists from the Royal Navy to help contractors with the 2-month operation.
It shows that it's been taken seriously and that any work that needs to be done to make the ship safe is taking place. And these are professional people doing it. So I welcome it, and it's nothing whatsoever to be alarmed about.
Work to remove the masts is expected to begin in June, but the bombs that lie beneath them aren't going anywhere. Joe Caution, ITV News, Sheerness.
Now, cold January weather and hopefully the right Christmas presents mean this month is one of the most popular times for video gaming. However, for people with severe physical disabilities, playing games, including most video games, used to be impossible until now, as a pioneering charity has worked to change that.
Using special equipment, the charity, Special Effect, has helped thousands of disabled children and adults to play and communicate. Charlotte Breer-Edney's report starts with Lucinda Ritchie from Sussex, who loves what she can now play online.
Being able to play games has been a great way to escape from the stresses of everyday life and is a source of enjoyment.
Lucinda Ritchie is chatting to me from West Sussex using just her eyes. By simply looking at letters on a screen, she's able to type words and have them read out. It's also the software she uses to play games with friends and interact with other gamers around the world.
I would consider it life-changing. As a child, I often played games with family and friends, so not being able to do that anymore was incredibly hard. When Special Effect opened the door to gaming again, it meant that I could relive some of that enjoyment and explore new and exciting games.
Lucinda is one of thousands of children and adults with physical disabilities who've been enabled to play computer games with the help of Special Effect. Using customised joysticks, touch buttons, modified controllers and gaze tracking software, they can play some of the most popular games out there. Founder Mick Donegan started the charity when he realised that when it comes to games, nobody likes to be left out.
It is actually the UNESCO Rights of the Child, Article 31. It's right there, the right to play, and these children couldn't. So I just thought, right, I'll jump into the deep end and start something and see if I can find a way to help, because it's a technology that hadn't really been explored. I soon realised it's just as important to people who are in their 70s, 80s.
Mick's charity now collaborates with multinational companies like Microsoft and EA Games to help them build more accessible products. So in future, gamers who use assistive technology may be able to simply plug in and play.
We can't help everybody in the world. We can't do assessments, one-to-one assessments for everybody in the world. But what we can do is to share what we know.
In recognition of his groundbreaking work, Mick's now been given an MBE in the New Year's Honours list.
I think it's a lovely way, a morale boost that we all need to start the new year. So it's been terrific, thank you.
Those he's helped say the honour is well deserved.
I was delighted to hear the news. Mick has and continues to do amazing and life-changing work to help people with a disability access technology and gaming.
The technology is helping Lucinda study for a master's degree at Southampton University, while Mick will continue his quest to make gaming even more accessible for everyone. Charlotte Breer-Edney, ITV News, Charlbury.
Oh, well done to him. That is wonderful, isn't it? Now, 40 years to go today, it was a bit of a record breaker. Holly joins us now. It really was, because apparently it was the coldest on record in the country.
That's right, yes. So the joint coldest temperature we've ever recorded in the UK. And of course, I'm sure many of our viewers remember the big snow, as it was called, of 82. We didn't get the lowest values, but let's take a look at what they were, because it was up in Scotland, in Aberdeenshire, at minus 27.2 degrees.
That is cold.
But England, it's ridiculously cold, isn't it? England, though, at Newbourne, Shropshire, got minus 26.6 -6.1 degrees. We weren't quite as cold, but nonetheless, even by day, we were down at -2s, -3s. A few nights later, we got -16. The big thing for us, though, was the snow. We can take a look at some pictures from 40 years ago. On the 8th and the 9th, we had not only heavy snow, we also had gale force winds, these easterlies coming in. And because it was so cold, the snow was very powdery, very light, so it really blew around. You got these massive snow drifts. You got, as I say, one of the worst blizzards, I think, in living memory. In fact, one of our viewers was telling me they live near RAF Chesington, and the snow drifts were so high that you could literally step over the 8-foot barbed wire fences. So just unbelievable weather.
It used to be more snow as well, wasn't it? As well, when I was young.
Well, we'll talk about this more, but it was snowier in the 70s and 80s. Yes, we haven't had that many snowy winters of late, which is, of course, what you'd expect with climate change.
Hopefully not too much snow coming up. Let's find out with Holly.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
A lovely start to the day this morning, some beautiful colours overhead, this medium level cloud being beautifully lit up there, but that's been thickening, lowering, and things are turning murky in places as you head through tonight, over high ground in particular. As we head into tomorrow morning, some poor visibilities, some patchy outbreaks of rain around as well, not a great day. Turning brighter though, as we head towards Wednesday, some sunshine overhead. However, we start seeing increasing potential for frost, mist and fog. And as the week goes on, that mist and fog could be increasingly likely to linger, perhaps all day by the end of the working week. So this is the feature affecting us tonight as we head into tomorrow. Then that higher pressure builds in behind, bringing the possibility of sunshine, but also, as I say, this risk of some complications as well. Out there at the moment, fairly cloudy skies, some patchy bits and pieces of rain around, and this cloud may well lower a touch as well, so perhaps a bit of hill fog as we head into tomorrow morning. But it is mild, temperatures actually not dropping much from our daytime values. So as we push into tomorrow morning, it's a mild start, it's a cloudy start, it's a murky start, hill fog around, look at that. Outbreaks of rain with us coming and going as well. It is that bit milder than today, so we're looking at temperatures for some getting up into double figures, 8, 9, 10 degrees, but as you can see, a fairly disappointing murky look to things. Our times of high water for tomorrow, we've got Dover at 5:22 and again at 6:12 as we head into the evening. So this looks nice, doesn't it? However, it does come with a big pinch of salt because we have got this increasing risk of mist and fog, which really could linger, I think, as we head towards the latter part of the working week. Some cold nights in store as well.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
So at least not as cold. Well, the ITV Evening News is coming next. But for now, from all the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for your company. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.